The story opens quietly, with a simple, gentle moment. A man kneels down, carefully wrapping a bandage around a child's scraped knee. His voice is calm, reassuring, promising that everything will be okay. The child's face lights up with a bright smile, gratitude shining in their eyes, before running off, reminded softly to be more careful next time. That man was the apothecary. But on this particular day, he wasn't there to heal anyone. He had only come in search of rare ingredients when suddenly a pawn shop owner called out to him. Without much explanation, the man urged him into a back room, insisting there was something he needed to see. There was unease in his voice, hesitation in his eyes. Then he opened the door, and the apothecary froze. Inside was a girl, or rather, what remained of one. Her body was frail, barely clinging to life. Her eyes were empty, lifeless, as if the light within them had long been extinguished. Her elven ears were torn, pierced over and over again. Scars covered her entire body, deep, cruel marks of torture that stretched across years, maybe even decades. Calmly, far too calmly, the shop owner explained. She had been used until she was no longer useful, then discarded. The apothecary couldn't move, couldn't breathe, and then the man added something even colder. Her body could still be valuable, useful for crafting rare medicines. With a small gesture, he told the apothecary to decide. Silently, ignoring him, the apothecary stepped forward. Channeling magic into his fingertip, he began to examine her condition. And what he found was far worse than he imagined. Infection had already spread through her body. Her fingers were beginning to decay, her nails completely torn out. Whip marks and blade wounds carved across her skin. Most of her teeth were gone, only a few left so she could still eat. One of her eyes was missing. And yet, "Can you hear me?" he asked softly. For a moment, nothing. Then, a faint twitch of her ear. She could hear him, even now, after everything. But the worst damage wasn't what he could see. Her internal organs were failing. She didn't have much time. And then, barely audible, a broken voice escaped her lips. "I want to go home." A single tear slid down her cheek. Something inside the apothecary snapped. His fist slammed into the ground, anger surging through him. How many times had she whispered those words, only to be ignored or punished? Meanwhile, the shop owner kept talking, trying to sell her off, calling her worthless than livestock, saying he just didn't want her to die in his shop.
That was enough. "I'll take her." The words came out like thunder. He asked for something to carry her with, but the owner just stared at him in disbelief. "You're insane," he said. "You're going to cross the bloody mountain carrying someone like that?" The apothecary didn't respond. Gently, he covered the girl with cloth, speaking softly. "I won't hurt you. I'll keep you safe." She didn't react. No resistance, no fear, nothing. It was as if she had long accepted being treated as nothing more than an object. He lifted her onto his back and began the long journey. As they traveled, the apothecary tried to speak to her, but she gave no response. Occasionally, he thought he heard her whisper something under her breath. By the time they reached the mountain's peak, night was approaching. He decided to stop and rest. As he removed the cloth covering her face, she continued murmuring one word: "Home." The apothecary set down his bag and prepared food, carefully making it soft enough for her to eat. When the scent reached her, she reacted faintly, as if surprised. He fed her slowly, one small spoonful at a time. To his surprise, she managed to chew. After she finished, he wiped her face clean. Another tear rolled down her cheek. But as night deepened, her condition worsened. Her breathing grew heavy, her body trembling with fever. The infection was spreading. Working quickly, the apothecary gathered what he could and prepared a makeshift remedy, something to reduce fever and fight the infection. He mixed herbs, crushed a magic stone, and added honey and salt to make it easier to swallow. As he helped her drink it, he spoke gently, urging her not to give up. She whispered again, weaker this time. "Where?" He understood. Brushing her hair softly, he answered, "We'll get you home, I promise." Soon she drifted into sleep. That night, the apothecary lay awake. He knew his words might have been reckless. He wanted to help her, but her suffering, it was likely caused by people like him. It had been 80 years since the war ended, since the 5 races began living in peace, but not everyone believed in that peace. To some, others were still nothing more than tools, or worse. As he drifted into sleep, shadows rose in his dream, hands clawing up from the ground, grabbing at him, the faces of those he had killed. He woke suddenly. Morning had come. The girl was awake. Her eyes were still empty, but there was something new, a faint spark. The apothecary smiled gently. "I'm going to carry you again," he said softly. He didn't know if he could truly save her, but he could try. Kneeling beside her, he took her hand. "You've suffered more than anyone should," he said, "not just in body, but in heart." He paused, then continued, "I don't know who you were before, but I'll give you a new name. Rasser. A name with a wish," he said, "because I will heal you, no matter what. You'll live again." She didn't respond, but she didn't look away either. And so their journey began. After a long and grueling journey, they finally arrived. The apothecary paused at the doorway, his voice soft yet steady. "This will be your new home." Inside, he gently removed the cloth wrapped around her and guided her onto a worn sofa. The room was still, almost suffocatingly quiet, until a faint whisper broke through. "Home." Rasser's voice was weak, fragile, but within it a small flicker of hope remained. The apothecary exhaled slowly and straightened. "You need to take a bath first," he said, trying to remain composed. But as his eyes lingered on her frail, nearly bare body, reality struck. She had nothing, no proper clothes, nothing to call her own. "I'll be right back." Without hesitation, he stepped outside and made his way to a nearby house. He knocked firmly. Moments later, a timid voice called from within, asking who it was. "It's the apothecary. I need a favor, urgently." The door creaked open, revealing a small child whose face lit up instantly. "Apothecary uncle," she beamed. Before he could respond, the girl, Moan, crossed her arms and pouted. "Did you bring the sweets you promised?" The apothecary gave an awkward smile. "Not this time. Sorry." From behind her, a woman's voice sharply scolded the child. Soon her mother appeared, graceful, composed, and striking. She apologized warmly, noting that he must be exhausted. But he shook his head and handed her a basket filled with food. "Actually, I came to ask for something." She raised an eyebrow, surprised. It wasn't like him to ask for help. "I need clothes," he said quietly. "For someone." Understanding flickered in her eyes. Without another word, she returned with a set of older garments, simple, worn, but sturdy enough to mend. The apothecary lowered his head. "Thank you." Back at the house, he wasted no time. Soon steam rose softly as warm water filled the bath. Carefully, respectfully, he removed Rasser's tattered clothing, shielding her with cloth to preserve what little dignity she had left. She didn't react. Not a flinch, not a word. She simply sat there, empty, hollow.
Then he saw her back, and everything inside him shattered. Her pale skin was covered with long, brutal scars, deep whip marks that had healed poorly, stretching from top to bottom like permanent reminders of suffering. His hands trembled. As he gently washed her, he could almost feel the cruelty behind those wounds, the hatred, the pain. Then his eyes fell on her neck. Faint, but unmistakable. Finger-shaped bruises. Marks of choking. The apothecary clenched his jaw, anger rising like fire within him. Who could do this? When he removed the bandage on her arm, the infection beneath nearly broke him, but he forced himself to focus. One by one, he treated her wounds.
He applied herbal ointments to her scars, carefully wrapping them to promote healing. For the deeper injuries, he placed cloth soaked in thick medicinal liquid, treatments that would need to be repeated again and again. It wasn't enough, but it was a beginning. When he finished, he helped her stand and gently dressed her. Among the clothes, he noticed a comb. So, she understood. Moan's mother hadn't just given clothes, she had understood everything without needing to ask. The apothecary carefully brushed Rasser's hair, untangling each strand. Slowly, a different image began to appear. Beneath the scars, beneath the damage, was someone gentle, someone beautiful, someone who once lived a completely different life. He let out a quiet breath. For a moment, everything felt calm. Then he noticed her trembling, not from pain, but from something else. A faint blush spread across her face. The apothecary blinked, then suddenly realized, "Ah, wait!" Panicked, he scooped her into his arms and rushed off. It felt strange. She hadn't reacted at all when he undressed her, yet something as small as this made her shy. There was still something human left inside her, something untouched. Later, as he fed her slowly, bite by bite, a thought formed in his mind. Her heart wasn't gone. Maybe, just maybe, it could still heal. If she could feel embarrassment, if she could respond to warmth, then there was hope. But reality quickly followed. Her missing teeth, her internal injuries, if those didn't improve, there was only one option left: amputation. The apothecary's expression darkened. Perhaps he could ask that doctor for help. Perhaps. That night he carried her to bed and laid her down gently. Her eyes, heavy with exhaustion, closed almost instantly, as if she had finally found a place where she could rest without fear. He stood there for a long moment. Then, quietly, he whispered a prayer. That somewhere in this world there existed something powerful enough to heal everything she had endured. The scars, the pain, the damage, all of it. A high-grade healing potion, something almost mythical, something said to even restore what was lost. As sleep slowly claimed him, one final thought lingered. Do such miracles truly exist? In the quiet of the morning, the apothecary fed a letter-carrying crow a handful of beans before carefully fastening a message to its back. With a sharp flap of wings, the bird soared into the sky, carrying his words far beyond the forest. "Hold on," the apothecary said gently to Rasser. "I'll be working in the field." Though known as an apothecary, the apothecary also cultivated many of his own ingredients. Living in such a remote place, it saved him both time and precious resources. As he worked the soil, a soft breeze drifted through the trees, carrying the fresh scent of the forest. Rasser inhaled deeply, and suddenly tears welled in her eyes. The smell of home. Silent sobs slipped down her cheeks. The apothecary said nothing, but he noticed. He understood. Not long after, a lively voice broke the calm. "Oji-san!" Moan suddenly appeared, slipping through the door with a bag slung over her shoulder, dressed casually as always. The apothecary greeted her, but she barely paid him any attention. Her curious eyes were already searching the room. She wasn't here for him. She was here for Rasser. "Can I talk to her?" Moan asked eagerly. The apothecary didn't refuse. In fact, he believed it might help. Rasser needed interaction, something to reconnect her with the world. As Moan sat beside Rasser, the apothecary turned back to his work, deep in thought. His earlier concerns about food and her condition led him to a solution: teeth. Using old texts and his own knowledge, he began crafting a set of dentures. He even considered carving boar tusks to replicate what she had lost. "Oji-san," Moan called out again. "Why won't she talk? I've been trying, but she won't answer me." The apothecary paused, then replied thoughtfully, "Maybe she's still searching for a reason to speak." Those words lingered in Moan's mind. Though young, an idea sparked. With a sudden grin, she rushed out. Sometime later, "Oji-san, look!" The apothecary turned and froze for a moment. Rasser looked different. A simple crown rested on her head, giving her a modest yet gentle beauty. It was a small change, but it transformed her presence entirely. With a soft smile, the apothecary said, "You did well. It's very pretty." But Moan's response caught him completely off guard. "She's going to be your wife, right?" "What? No!" The apothecary quickly waved his hands in panic. "I'm just treating her, nothing more." Moan only laughed, clearly amused, before skipping away in a bright, teasing mood. Watching her leave, the apothecary quietly reflected. Moments like these, they mattered. They could help Rasser heal, not just physically, but mentally too.
He continued her routine checkup. He refreshed her eyes with drops, replaced the medicinal cloth aiding her scars, and carefully monitored her faint, fragile heartbeat. Then, at last, the dentures were ready, a perfect reconstruction of the teeth she had lost. As he gently fitted them into place, he said, "Try them." A faint smile formed beneath his mask. "Today, we celebrate your new teeth." Later that day, a livestock farmer arrived, handing the apothecary a large cut of meat, far more than expected. The apothecary prepared it carefully. The meat sizzled over the fire, releasing a rich, mouth-watering aroma. He marinated it with fruit extracts to tenderize it further, and sliced it into small, easy-to-chew pieces. Then he offered the first bite to Rasser. The moment she tasted it, her body reacted instantly. Drool spilled from her lips, her ears trembled, and her eyes widened. The apothecary smiled warmly and fed her more, piece by piece. She didn't stop. Even as tears streamed endlessly down her face, she kept eating. It was as if this single moment would stay with her forever. "Being able to eat makes you happy, doesn't it, Rasser?" the apothecary said softly. From that day on, subtle changes began to appear. Her sensitivity improved. Her appetite grew stronger. There was hope. Perhaps, soon, she could speak. "Today we'll have bacon," the apothecary said one day. But suddenly, Rasser collapsed. A violent cough tore through her body. As blood spilled from her lips, she hit the ground with a dull thud, her body trembling uncontrollably. "Rasser!" The apothecary rushed to her side, panic rising. Something was terribly wrong. Her chest turned red, her breathing became erratic, her body convulsed in painful spasms, her eyes bloodshot. This wasn't an ordinary illness. "Poison." The apothecary's expression darkened. "Obsidian spider venom. Small creatures, but their toxin was infamous, deadly, precise, and often used in assassinations since ancient times." As Rasser writhed in agony, the truth became clear. This wasn't an accident.
It was tied to her past. Damn it, the apothecary gritted his teeth. I won't let her die here. Without hesitation, he sprang into action, already preparing the medicine that could mean the difference between life and death.
As the apothecary worked quickly to suppress the violent spasms, he prepared a crude remedy, ground charcoal mixed into a thin solution. With careful urgency, he fed it to Rasser on an empty stomach, hoping it would absorb and counteract the poison. Supporting her frail body, he gently tapped her back, urging her to purge whatever lingered inside. Moments later, her body convulsed, and she vomited. Among the bile, something unnatural emerged, a dark, misshapen pill. The apothecary immediately picked it up, his eyes narrowing as he examined it. It wasn't an ordinary pill. It was more like a hollow shell, something that had remained inside her for quite some time and had only now begun to dissolve. Faint etchings covered its surface, ancient script, twisted and deliberate, curse markings, a slow-killing mechanism, a cruel design meant to ensure a prolonged, agonizing death, far from the hands of those responsible. As the apothecary crushed the cursed shell in his palm, a surge of fury rose within him. The sheer inhumanity of it made his chest tighten. Whoever had done this had planned everything, leaving no trace, no blame, only suffering. Later, he called for Moan's mother to come and watch over Rasser. Moan herself could barely hold back her tears as she watched her best friend drift further into danger. The apothecary began preparing for departure. "You must stay with her," he told them firmly. "I'll retrieve what I need to create an antidote." They both nodded without hesitation. Still, the apothecary's voice faltered slightly as he added, "I may be gone for more than 3 days. I've written instructions. Follow them when the poison worsens." A pause. Then, with visible strain, he forced out the words he didn't want to say. "If her condition declines beyond saving, and I'm not back, please give her a proper burial. I won't be able to face it alone." The weight of his words lingered in the air. As Moan's mother took the instructions, she noticed the pain etched across the apothecary's face. Wanting to lift his spirits, she lightly struck his arm with playful firmness. "It'll be fine," she said. "You do your part, we'll do ours." Moan wiped her tears and nodded. "We'll keep her alive. You just come back with the cure." Their resolve steadied him. Before leaving, the apothecary knelt beside Rasser. "Hold on," he whispered softly. "I'll be back soon, with the cure." To craft the antidote, the apothecary needed several rare components: mandragora root, gnarled and human-shaped like ginseng, mana-infused quartz crystals, and most crucially, a fresh sample of the original toxin. Which meant only one thing. He had to enter the spider's den. He left his heavy pack hidden outside the cave, knowing it would only slow him down in battle. As he checked the string of his longbow, he frowned slightly. It felt unfamiliar, distant, as though it belonged to someone he used to be. The cave swallowed him in darkness. Only a faint glow from his fingertip lit the path ahead, casting weak shadows along the jagged walls. The air grew thicker as he ventured deeper, until he came upon a vast network of webs, layered and dense, trapping small, lifeless creatures within. And there, he saw it, the spider, massive, scaled, watching. The apothecary raised his bow, steadying his aim as the creature's many eyes reflected the dim light. He drew the string back, but hesitated. A thought pierced through his focus. With his power, he could end it instantly, just like he had done countless times before, back when killing was second nature. His hands trembled. For a moment, he faltered and released. The arrow struck, but only glanced off the spider's hardened carapace. Not enough. Not like before. The apothecary clenched his jaw. "Why am I fighting?" The answer came just as quickly. For her.
Despite the rust in his movements, despite the hesitation weighing him down, he had to fight. He had to be better for Rasser. Drawing another arrow, the apothecary steadied his breath. Then he invoked it. Aruma! A magic sigil flared at the tip of the arrow, lightning coiled around it, crackling with raw energy before bursting forward, striking dead center into the spider's head. The creature shrieked. The apothecary didn't stop. Arrow after arrow followed, each one precise, relentless, until the massive body collapsed, lifeless against its own web. Silence returned. Breathing heavily, the apothecary approached the corpse and carefully extracted the venom gland. At last, clutching it tightly, his gaze hardened with resolve. Just hold on a little longer, Rasser.
After gathering every ingredient he could find, the apothecary finally completed the antidote. There was no guarantee it would work, but it was her only chance. Filling a strange, tooth-shaped syringe, he looked at her fragile body and spoke in a quiet, steady voice. "Hang on. This will save you." And without hesitation, he injected the antidote. That night, everything changed. Her breathing, once faint and uneven, slowly became calm and steady. The apothecary didn't sleep for even a moment, watching over her, waiting, hoping for any sign. And then he saw it. She was getting better. Relief washed over him instantly. The worst is over. You're safe now. But for Rasser, things weren't so simple. Her entire life had been consumed by darkness. It felt as if countless black roots had wrapped around her, pulling her deeper and deeper, never letting her escape. Even when she looked up at the sky, wishing someone would come, no one ever did. Until now. Suddenly, she saw a hand reaching out to her, calling her name. It drew closer, larger, warmer, like it was ready to pull her from the abyss. And for the first time, she could see it clearly. Her eyes snapped open. Light! That single word startled the apothecary. He rushed to her side, his voice trembling slightly. "Can you see me?" But her answer wasn't what he expected. I can feel that you're there." Her vision hadn't fully returned, but she could sense the light. And that alone meant one thing. She was recovering. The apothecary quickly checked her condition. Her muscles were responding again. The burning fever, gone. The redness across her chest, completely faded. Even her pupils were reacting. The poison that once pushed her to the brink of death was disappearing. But then, tears began streaming down her face. The apothecary panicked. "Hey, does it hurt? What's wrong?" She looked at him confused, fragile. "Rasser? Is that my name?" The apothecary froze.
"I didn't know your name," he admitted softly. "I just gave you one. If you don't like it, tell me what I should call you." She tried to remember. She tried to hold on to something, anything. But there was nothing. "I don't remember." That's when it hit him. Retrograde amnesia. She hadn't just lost her strength, she had lost everything. Her past, her identity, her home. And that brought an even greater problem. If she was truly an elf, then finding her people would be nearly impossible. The elves lived hidden from the world, untouched, unseen. No one knew where they were. As the apothecary stood there, lost in thought, she spoke again, gently. "Thank you for saving me." Those simple words shifted something within him. Maybe he had been too pessimistic. Maybe this wasn't the end. He looked at her, determination returning to his eyes. "From now on, I'll take care of you. I'll make sure you recover completely, no matter what." And then, for the first time, Rasser smiled. A soft, quiet, beautiful smile. Not of someone who remembered her past, but of someone ready to accept her future. Because this was the beginning of her new life.
As the days quietly drifted by, the heavy tension that once filled the air slowly melted into something warmer, something gentler. We return to a peaceful moment inside the house, where Moan's mother turns back with a radiant, almost glowing smile. Her voice carries a soft excitement as she asks a simple question: does Rasser like sweets? A quiet celebration. A miracle had happened. Rasser had survived. And so, without needing to say much more, everyone agrees today calls for something special. A cake. And we find Rasser sitting there, her posture small, her voice even smaller. With a shy, hesitant tone, she admits that she likes sweets. That one soft confession is enough. Right beside her, Moan bursts with pure, uncontrollable joy. Her happiness overflows as she fusses over Rasser, gently fixing her hair, unable to hide just how much she cares. Rasser, now dressed in clean and proper clothes, looks like a completely different person, no longer the fragile girl on the brink, but someone slowly returning to life. But not everyone shares in that calm. The apothecary, his voice heavy and exhausted, offers to help with the preparations. Yet before he can even take a step, Moan's mother suddenly forces him down into a chair with surprising strength. He lets out a pained grunt, clearly caught off guard. Even Rasser reacts in surprise. Her tone changes, firm, serious. She tells him what no one else had the courage to say. He needs to rest. It had been days since the apothecary last slept, days of pushing himself beyond his limits, fighting, searching, healing, all for Rasser. Even Moan joins in, her tone unusually sharp, almost like an angry little cat, pointing out the deep, dark circles under his eyes. The apothecary, half in disbelief, asks if he really looks that bad. Their answer comes instantly: yes. For the first time, it becomes undeniable. His body is at its breaking point. All the battles, all the sleepless nights, they've taken their toll. Moan's mother gently places a warm cup of tea into his hands, steam rising softly into the air. Her voice softens again as she reminds him that even he doesn't have to carry everything alone. Everyone needs help sometimes, and if Rasser had fallen, they wouldn't know what to do. So what would happen if he did? Those words hit deeper than any wound. The apothecary lowers his gaze, quietly taking the cup. With a faint, grateful smile, he thanks her for always being there when he needed it most. Finally, he allows himself to rest. As the warmth of the tea spreads through him, his eyes drift towards Rasser. She looks better. Alive. The color has returned to her face, and little by little the innocent girl she once was is beginning to reappear. And when she smiles, it leaves a deep mark on his heart. All his pain, all his sacrifices, they meant something. And slowly, as peace settles in, the apothecary closes his eyes. But rest doesn't come quietly. A memory breaks through. A young boy running desperately, clutching something tightly to his chest. His breathing is ragged, panicked, until suddenly, a rough hand grabs him. He's thrown to the ground. Two grown men loom over him, their faces twisted with anger as their fists come crashing down again and again. They shout at him, mocking him, telling him he isn't safe, not even as a child. A kick lands hard in his stomach. The truth becomes clear. He had only stolen a few pieces of bread, and for that, this was his punishment. This wasn't a rare moment. This was his life. The villagers treated him like nothing. Even the other children followed suit, throwing stones at him as if he were nothing more than a target. Bruised, trembling, and barely able to stand, the boy drags himself away, clutching his injured arm. Eventually, he collapses beneath a large tree, hunger gnawing at him as always. Another day without food, another day alone, an orphan with no one to turn to. His empty eyes stare down at the grass, his body on the verge of giving up, until a pair of unfamiliar boots enter his view. Slowly, he looks up and is met with something unexpected. Horns! A towering figure stands before him, a white-haired demon with a powerful build. Yet instead of hostility, his voice is warm, gentle. He asks the boy a simple question. Why is he alone when all the other children are happy? And then, are you hungry? Those words change everything. For the first time in his life, someone reaches out to him, not with cruelty, but with kindness. The demon offers his hand and promises him food. The boy, the one who would one day become the apothecary, doesn't hesitate. Weak, starving, and desperate, he takes it. Moments later, a bowl filled to the brim is placed before him. Without thinking, he devours it, not even stopping to breathe, afraid it might disappear. The demon chuckles softly, telling him to slow down, and with a gentle smile, he asks, "Is it good?" Tears well up in the boy's eyes as he nods. It was more than good. It was everything. The memory fades, and we return to the present. The apothecary opens his eyes. Before him, he sees Moan happily feeding Rasser. Frosting smudges around her mouth as her pointed ears twitch with delight. She smiles brightly, her voice filled with warmth as she declares how sweet and delicious the cake is.
That sight, it feels familiar, like a reflection of something long ago. And in that moment, the apothecary remembers his own smile, the one he gave that demon so many years ago. Tears quietly form in his eyes, because now he understands. Just as someone once saved him, he too had reached out and saved someone else. With a soft, regretful whisper, he admits to himself that he's alive today because someone chose to be kind. Time passes peacefully, laughter filling the room, until suddenly, tap, tap. A crow lands by the window, knocking sharply against the glass. The apothecary immediately notices. He rises and opens it, retrieving the note tied to its leg. Moan's mother calls out, asking if everything is all right. He nods. It's from an old friend. As he reads, his expression shifts. The letter speaks of interest. His friend is willing to help, intrigued by Rasser's condition, though, as expected, he asks for payment, knowing full well the apothecary tends to save money. He exhales softly. Some things never change. But as his gaze drifts back toward Rasser, his decision becomes clear. This step is necessary, because her recovery isn't over yet. And if her condition worsens, if there's no other option, then the unthinkable may become reality. Amputation. And that is a risk he cannot ignore. Back home, Moan and Moan's mother watched them leave with quiet hope. Moan, especially, made one thing clear. This time, Rasser would not come back empty-handed. Dressed differently than before, Rasser wore an elegant outfit layered with warm clothing, covering her from head to toe. As they stepped away, the apothecary gave one final wave, and their journey began. Along the way, he explained the path ahead. Their destination lay far to the north, where his knowledgeable friend resided, but reaching it would be anything but easy. First, they had to pass through a deadly monster-filled forest, a place crawling with creatures of every kind and strength. Then, they would need to find Karga Town, hidden deep within the mountains, a difficult task, but one that could save them months of travel. From there, a dimensional gate transfer would take them straight to the northern border. A gate? Rasser softly repeated, unfamiliar with the concept. But little by little, she began to understand. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the apothecary pointed to the necklace around her neck, a magical item that reflected her emotions. If she ever felt distress, it would glow with the power within her. Though he assured her it was only a precaution, Rasser quietly nodded, taking his words to heart. The forest grew thicker, darker, and the journey more exhausting. Hearing him struggle to breathe, Rasser softly apologized, blaming herself for being a burden. But the apothecary quickly shut that thought down, gently reassuring her. He was used to carrying heavy loads, and she was no trouble at all. His words brought a faint blush to her cheeks, a small warmth breaking through her timid expression. As night fell, they decided to rest. A small fire flickered between them as he prepared a simple meal. Despite the calm, silence lingered. Neither of them knew how to begin a conversation. Until, in a faint voice, Rasser finally spoke, asking for the name of the one who saved her.
The question caught him off guard. After a brief pause, he answered, "The apothecary." But he avoided her gaze, because it wasn't the truth. It was only a title, a name that meant medicine seller. He had hidden who he really was. Yet Rasser, unaware of the lie, smiled brightly, her ears twitching with joy as she promised to remember his name no matter what. She told him how happy she was to have met him. He responded, but deep inside, guilt consumed him. To him, this lie was necessary. She must never know who he truly was, or the darkness he carried. As those thoughts crept in, shadows of his past began to surface, grasping at him, reminding him of what he believed himself to be. Someone unworthy, someone less than human. But even so, he made a silent vow. He would protect her, heal her, and make sure she returned home safely. That was all that mattered. Suddenly, a rustling sound echoed through the forest. In an instant, the apothecary drew his knife, stepping forward to shield her. From the darkness emerged a massive figure, a king grizzly, a creature that should have been in hibernation. Steam escaped its mouth as it slowly approached, its presence overwhelming, its intent unmistakable. The apothecary froze. Facing such a beast alone was dangerous enough, but protecting someone at the same time made escape nearly impossible. Still, he had no choice. As the beast lunged, he moved. But before their clash could begin, a voice rang out. Rasser began to sing. A gentle, magical melody filled the air, washing over the forest with an overwhelming sense of peace. And just like that, the beast stopped. Its aggression faded, its hostility dissolved, until it simply turned away and disappeared into the darkness. Silence returned. Rasser softly told him it was okay now. Stunned, he realized what had just happened. She had communicated with the beast. When he asked her about it, she hesitated, unsure if she truly possessed such an ability. But when she saw him trembling, she couldn't stop herself from helping. Hearing this, the apothecary knelt before her and thanked her sincerely. She had just saved his life, with nothing but her voice. As she smiled, he began to understand something unsettling. That king grizzly, a top predator feared by all, had fled. Not in anger, but in fear. And as he stared deeper into the dark forest, a chilling thought crossed his mind. Just what kind of place had they truly stepped into?
The next morning, the apothecary carefully scanned the area. No signs of monsters nearby, or so it seemed. As they ventured deeper into the jungle, an uneasy feeling crept in. Something wasn't right. From behind him, Rasser's voice trembled. She tried to speak, then finally cried out. Something was coming straight toward them. The apothecary held his breath, focusing. He asked where it would strike from, but Rasser said nothing. She simply lowered her head. And then, from the shadows ahead, a massive Titan boa emerged. Its sheer size, its presence was enough to send chills down the apothecary's spine. This wasn't normal. It was a mutant. And worst of all, it had already seen them. The apothecary steadied himself. Running wasn't an option. He'd lose instantly. Without hesitation, he downed several potions, his body surging with enhanced strength. The serpent let out a deafening roar, and the apothecary stepped forward, ready to face it head-on. Gently setting Rasser aside, he charged. Just before the snake could strike, the apothecary leapt forward, his blade flashing. A clean hit. The dagger sliced deep, but it wasn't enough. The creature's thick muscle shielded its vital organs. The wound barely slowed it down.
The battle raged on. Then, one mistake. A fang grazed him. Poison. The apothecary knew this had to end now. As the snake coiled for another attack, he focused everything into one final move. In a single, lightning-fast strike, he cut the beast clean in half. Blood poured as the massive body collapsed to the ground, lifeless. Silence returned to the jungle. Breathing heavily, the apothecary turned back, clutching his wound, and approached the trembling Rasser. She called out his name, her voice still shaking. Kneeling beside her, the apothecary spoke gently. If we hadn't stopped it, that thing would have reached the village, and everyone there would have died. Slowly, she calmed down. But then, a sharp sting spread through the apothecary's wound. He quickly wrapped it, his expression tightening. Poison. He needed an antidote and fast. Still, he forced a reassuring smile. "We're close," he told her softly. "We'll make it in no time." And for the first time since the battle, Rasser smiled back.
After days of traveling on foot, they finally arrived at the Karuga Transit, the very place where they were meant to use the teleportation service to reach the northern regions. As the apothecary stepped inside, he tried to ease Rasser's worries. He reassured her that although his friend lived far away, he was knowledgeable and capable, someone who could truly help them. But the moment they approached the counter, things took a turn. A disheveled man with a cold, lifeless voice rejected their request outright, without even giving a proper reason. The apothecary stood there in silence. Then the receptionist's gaze shifted toward Rasser's trembling figure. His expression twisted with disgust as he began to speak, his words dripping with contempt. He claimed that the apothecary had no right to bring a long-eared girl on such a journey. But that wasn't the real reason. Deep down, the man simply couldn't stand the sight of her, her fragile condition. He sneered, making cruel jokes, saying he wouldn't allow some twisted man to carry what he called a corpse to the north. He mocked the apothecary, as if people like him didn't belong in this world anymore. And he didn't stop there. With a smug grin, the man continued listing excuses, before casually suggesting that maybe, just maybe, he'd allow Rasser through for an extra fee. That was the final straw. Rasser broke down in tears. The moment the apothecary saw that, something inside him snapped. His blood boiled, his fists clenched. Every fiber of his being screamed to crush the man where he stood, to break every bone in his body. But he didn't. Instead, the apothecary fixed him with a cold, piercing glare, one that seemed to look straight through his soul. In a calm but dangerous voice, he said he was willing to pay the extra, but the man needed to shut up. and do his job. That was enough. The receptionist's arrogance crumbled instantly. He faltered, completely folding under the apothecary's presence. Without another word, he hurried to process their request, backtracking on everything he had said. He even added that there was no need for any extra payment, especially if their journey was urgent.
Moments later, as the apothecary carefully lifted Rasser into his arms, the teleportation was activated. In a flash, they were gone, sent straight to the northern region. Behind them, the man muttered bitterly, complaining that the apothecary wasn't a respectable person. But the apothecary didn't care. Once they arrived, his attention was solely on Rasser. He kept asking if she was all right, his voice filled with concern. However, the apothecary already knew what he had to do next. He mentioned a well-known place nearby, somewhere they should visit before anything else. And so they went. There, in the northern region, they tried a local delicacy, the famous shidrop. As always, Rasser lit up with joy. She happily enjoyed the meal, her ears twitching and swaying with every bite, her earlier tears completely forgotten. Watching her like that, it was enough to ease the apothecary's heart. But for him, something felt off. A strange, lingering sting pulsed in his fist. That night, they had no choice but to share a bed. As the apothecary glanced over, he saw her sleeping peacefully, like a child, free from worry, her face calm and gentle. And in that quiet moment, he made a promise to himself. No matter what it took, he would save her.